Hello everyone. I sent this meme from Operator Starsky over to my parents earlier today, but what I found interesting about it is that I have watched each of these YouTubers before. And in fact, I watched both Nikki and Natasha's channels before the invasion of Ukraine even began. So today, I want to talk about what I feel about the Russians who have fled Russia. But before I do, I also wanted to briefly mention a few things that have sprung up recently. The conservative wing of Twitter is essentially right now nothing more than an echo chamber for Putin's propaganda when it deals with issues of Ukraine. And I mean that literally. Whatever I hear a Russian troll say will shortly be echoing through the accounts of people with the tags Ultra MAGA in their bio. So I wanted to briefly address a common claim being spouted today that I've seen just today. Florida just got hit with a hurricane. Shouldn't we be sending our aid to Florida instead of to Ukraine? To which I can only say, what is Florida going to do with HIMARS and Claymore mines, Javelin missiles, and anti-air system, and millions of dollars in ammunition? You know, the actual stuff we're sending to Ukraine. And secondly, now that Putin has pretended to annex 4 more oblasts in Ukraine, and Ukraine has filed for expedited NATO membership, I've read lots of places where the Russian trolls specifically are saying Ukraine can't join NATO during a war. I just want to point out to all of the Russian trolls who are saying that, I'm reporting you to the FSB for your crime of calling a special operation a war. See, Putin never declared war, so there is no war going on that would keep Ukraine from being allowed membership into NATO. So checkmate on your own criteria. Enjoy prison for the next 5 minutes for calling it a war. After that 5 minutes, of course, you're going to get sent to the front lines, and then you can experience the aid we've given Ukraine firsthand. So congratulations. But as I said at the beginning, that's not really the point of this video. I wanted instead to talk about the Russian civilians who have fled Russia. And to preface this, I should also point out that I have several friends who live in Russia today, and I also have friends who are in Ukraine at the moment. None of these friends that I know who are in Russia are YouTubers. And as far as I know thus far, all of them are still living in Russia. Most of them are at very low risk of being mobilized. Several of them are women, and it's very unlikely that they're going to be mobilized, especially because the women who are at risk tend to be in the medical fields, and that's not where these are. The men are also primarily they're either university teachers or students. So that doesn't guarantee anything for them, of course, but since they're all also living near Moscow, they're within a couple hundred kilometers of Moscow. Mobilization is occurring in the far-reaching regions of Russia where Putin wants to kill off some of those minorities anyway. But because of that, my friends who living near Moscow have a relatively good chance of not being mobilized at all. Now, every single one of them that I've spoken with have told me that they are against the war. And some of them, of course, don't say war, as I mentioned earlier. That gets you in jail. And usually when I'm talking with them, I try to avoid saying certain things like that because I don't want them to risk anything that would come down from the police in their own country. But a couple of them have just outright told me not to beat around the bush. They say it's flat out a war. That's what it is. Don't call it something else. So everybody in Russia knows this is a war, no matter what Putin is calling it. So, just to address briefly, if you're concerned about the bias of what I'm hearing because of the people I'm talking to, yes, I acknowledge right off the bat, the people who I know, by virtue of the fact that they are willing to talk to a Westerner, already are not anti-Western like many in Russia are. So there is that fact. But the conversations that I've had with them are very similar to the statements I've seen in videos by Nikki Proshkin or Natasha from Natasha's Adventures, which used to be called Yeah Russia or Yay Russia. I don't remember how she pronounced it, but it was before the war. Now it's Natasha's Adventures because she wants to separate herself from the Russian label. Or another YouTuber is Konstantin from Inside Russia. Those are the 3 that were in that meme. And the irony of Inside Russia is that now Konstantin is not inside Russia. So there is that. But Any case, you can see that what these individuals on YouTube are saying matches with the thoughts and concerns of the friends that I talk to weekly. So this isn't like a one-off. It's not just a handful of people. These people exist through the Russian society. So with that background, the question again, what do I think about all the Russians who are fleeing now because of the mobilization in Russia? Well, there are at least two different types of people fleeing Russia at the moment. Probably more, but there's at least two. The first type is the kind of person who doesn't care at all about the Ukrainians, doesn't oppose any of the atrocities that Russia has committed, and doesn't care at all about civilians getting murdered, but they don't want to die for Russia. They don't want to go to the front line and risk death or mutilation by injury or any of that. They don't care about what happens to the Ukrainians, but they're about self-preservation. And they know that this is not a good thing to be mobilized. I mean, Russia has claimed only 6,000 dead from their side while they've killed 100,000 Ukrainians. That's what they're claiming. But they're demanding an extra 300,000 men be mobilized. Not even a brain-dead alcoholic watching only state media in Moscow would believe that that means the war is going well for Russia. Okay, so they know personally that they have a very high chance of dying or at least getting injured if they get mobilized, and they don't want to do that, so they flee. But then you have the other group of people, like Konstantin from Inside Russia specifically. I heard him state on one of his videos that he will refuse to ever pick up a weapon and kill a Ukrainian. He will not do it, period. Many Russians do have family in Ukraine. They've never accepted the claims that Putin made for why Ukraine needs to be conquered by Russia. So these second group of people seek to flee Russia because if they get mobilized, they will end up in jail because they're going to refuse to commit atrocities. They're refusing to go against their conscience. Okay? And like I said, there's going to be other groups of people, probably mixtures between them. Everything's on a scale when you're talking about human motivations. But it's the people in the second group specifically that I really want to talk about for this video. Because the terrible irony is that while these are the people most deserving to escape Russia, they're also the people who, by staying in Russia, have the only opportunity to replace Putin's regime with something that Russians can be proud of. Now, by saying this, I am in no way condemning the choices that they've made. It's hard for me to know what choice I would make if I had to face a similar circumstance in my own country. And besides which, every person needs to be convinced of themselves for the right move, or it's just a different form of external totalitarianism requiring people to do things. No, so again, I don't say anything against any of these people. My point is just that if every single person who has a moral backbone flees Russia, who is left inside Russia after that? It's only the people, by definition, without a moral backbone. It's only the people who are Putin's puppets to begin with, and who will therefore replace Putin with another Putin clone when Putin is no more. And he's old. He's not going to be there much longer, no matter what happens in Ukraine. So who are they going to replace him with if the only people in the pool of residents left are other psychotic individuals such as himself? And I mean psychotic in the moral sense because I think cognitively he's not a psychotic. But anyway, on a personal level, I'm very happy that Nikki, Natasha, Konstantin, all of them are more or less out of danger now. Personally, I am very happy for that. But on the societal level, I think that actually makes it worse for Russia in the future. Russia has already lost this war. And I don't mean by that Ukraine has already won the war. It's kind of hard to say that you've got a victory when you've had tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of war crimes now committed against your people. But regardless of that, regardless of what Ukraine has happened in this war, Russia has clearly lost. And the only question for them now is how bad is it going to be before the inevitable end of the conflict when it's all resolved? If Russia does not have citizens like Nikki or Konstantin, or even like Zach the Russian, he's another YouTuber who had to escape the police in St. Petersburg at the very beginning of the war, and who's been living in Georgia ever since. If those people are not in Russia to rebuild the society in the aftermath, then what Russia is going to be rebuilt? What is that Russia going to be? It'll be the same Russia that was just destroyed by Putin. So again, let me be clear. I have to emphasize this because it's very easy to take this out of context. I'm not blaming any of the YouTubers mentioned here for fleeing or pretending that any of them individually is responsible it's their job to correct the Russian government. I'm not saying that at all. I'm only mentioning them because they are the type of people that Russia has the capability of producing and who Russia is currently destroying and in the process destroying itself. To be blunt, it might already be too late to effect a cultural change in the government of Russia. So it may very well be in the best interest of everyone like these people, including my friends who haven't yet fled Russia, to just get the heck out of there now. But if there's any hope of salvaging something from the wreckage that's going to be resulting after this, it is through the people like them, not the people in the first group who just care about themselves and don't even care if their own government is committing atrocities. It's the people with the moral fiber and constitution. Their character is what is needed for the recovery of Russia. So with all that in mind, I do hope everyone continues to pray for Ukraine and for all the good Russians who do exist. And have a nice day.